Hello, it's been a while since I've done this, so hopefully everything is working well here. What I'm going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at Winter 23 flow features. This isn't scripted, it's just kind of me looking through the list I built from the release notes and playing around with things. There's some really game changer features in this particular release that I definitely want to talk about and play around with. I've already done a little bit of poking around. And I thought we would take a look at just things together. This is live, so if you're watching this live, feel free to chat. Like I said, this is informal. And then if this is something you're watching after I'm done, feel free to leave a comment. I do read them all, and I do my best to respond. So let's go ahead and dive right in. All right. And I need to make sure I forgot to pick the right browser. That's terrible. There we go. All right, there we go. Here's our wonderful flow setup. So, just generally speaking, this is the release. That's the beginning of the end for workflow rules. They basically are going to be blocking new workflow rule creation for new orgs. It's out there, and so you really want to go through and start planning your migration if you have workflow rules that you may need to be adding additional work to it sometime in the future. Nothing's going to stop working for you, so don't panic. So the workflow rules, you can still edit them and deactivate and activate them. It's not that big of a deal. But if you are adding additional functionality, this may be the time to go, let's not do that in a workflow rule. Let's go and convert that over to flow. There is a migration tool that's available to you. However, it currently does not work if your workflow rule does any task creation or any cross-object field updates, like updating the account type when an opportunity is closed to one. But beyond that, it's not. It works really well for migrating workflow rules. I did do a workflow rule migration and a process builder migration presentation live in past videos, so you can take a look at those. But let's kind of dive in here. I've created this flow already, just kind of playing around with a couple of features that I find really interesting. This first one is about selecting more than one value in a lookup. So we've had lookup components for a while for screens. It's kind of a little weird because the way that you get it here is you say, hey, I have this lookup field on this object called this, and it's kind of uses that as the base of how the lookup should react and work, but it doesn't actually use that field. Like you're not creating a record for wherever that lookup field is on. It's a little different. You can see on the right hand side with the attributes here that I'm using the account ID, the standard lookup field for opportunities. And the new item here is this maximum selection, where I believe it defaults to 1. I have chosen 6, just for an example. And what that does is it means that a person can select up to 6 different accounts. And then down here with the record ID collection and the record ID, this is for putting default values in to that lookup. So that's pretty cool. The cooler thing, and this is the one that I definitely want to play around with, is we now have in and not in operators. So I can go through and say, I have multiple IDs for accounts, and I want to grab all the contacts across all those accounts. And we couldn't do that gracefully until now. We would have to loop through each account and do a get for each account within a loop, which is a big no-no from a best practice standpoint. Now we don't have to do that, which is pretty neat. What I'm not 100% sure is how flexible this is. So I have an example already set up here to use that, and we'll take a look at that. But I'm using it in conjunction with the data table, which is a beta feature. I like using beta features some of the time because there are sometimes beta features where you just know that they're not really going to change that much, but it's technically beta, which means it is not 100% baked out. And it doesn't mean that it's not going to change between now and when it becomes generally available. Some things don't dramatically change, some things do. So always think twice about using something like this in a production environment, simply because of the fact that you may have something that you use for a while and then poof, Salesforce goes a completely different route when it becomes generally available, and it no longer is the exact way you set it up and you have to redo the work. Just something to be aware of. But a data table is pretty darn cool. It lets us go through and display multiple records really, really easy, like a table. And this is something I've been wanting to be able to do in Flow for a long time, because there's no good way to do it. In past, you would end up having to kind of build out a text resource to try to combine multiple fields and use rows or lines to represent multiple records, but it looked awful. Here, we can actually create a table that allows people to either just see the data, or you can have it select one or more records. And we can even configure what fields show up here. So you can see that I have added the account ID, the name, title, email, and business phone. And adding a column is as simple as clicking the Add Column button and then picking the applicable field that you want to show. So, for example, let's do birthday, because I don't think I have this on there. And you can pick a different label if you want to. I do recommend using wrap text versus clip text, just because I think it looks nicer. You also have no control over the width of the window that the user is using when this runs. So it's not necessarily something that's going to be going to generate the greatest table, depending on the width and how many fields you have in here and how much data. But we'll take a look. We're going to just run this in the debug. So I'll hit the debug button, and we'll just hit run. So we get our wonderful accounts here. I have a couple things already fixed in here, and let's see, can I remember another account? I believe there's a hotel. Yeah, Grand Hotels and Resorts. Great. So you can see how I've added multiple accounts through this lookup view. And we'll click next. And here's a list of all the contacts across the accounts that I just selected. And you can see off to the side here with the debug, where we have the get records where the account ID is in, and it's this account.record IDs. That's the resource that the lookup provides for having more than one ID, one value in the lookup field. And so the collection that results is literally just account IDs. That's all that's in there. And it's able to find all these different contacts. And it's selectable. So we could select multiple records and then click next and be able to do other things with that particular data selected. So, for example, might be able to use this to build out an email distribution list, or to have them see multiple records and then have them selected to create new ones or update them, or whatever the case may be. This is not an editable table, so it's just viewable data that could be selectable. It is still pretty darn cool. So one thing I don't know is this works, but what if we did something a little bit different? What if we got a series of what if we got accounts through a get and use that in our query to get loop? I don't think it's going to work, because it will be account records, not just IDs, but we're going to try it. And then if it doesn't work, I have an idea of what to do to make it work. So this would be our accounts and account. Oh, I should really put a description in here. And let's go with name, because I believe I have a whole bunch that just have the word user in the name. So we'll do contains, and we'll get all our records and we'll store all the fields. Okay, so that will be getting all the accounts. And now let's go do our contacts. So we'll do another get records. Accounts. There are, of course, other ways that we could do it with this particular scenario, but for testing purposes, I think this works pretty good. All right. So you can see I don't have anything to select here, and that's what I kind of expected. I can't just go from an account collection to do this. So I do need to have a new resource, and I bet the choice that I should do is going to be just a series of text. So we'll just call this account IDs. Okay, and allow multiple records. So that will work. And then we want to make sure we get all. So there's a little trick. We can't go directly from the account, and it's right here. We need to have something in the middle to build that resource. So in this case, I think doing a loop is probably the best way to do this, but we don't have to do the get in the loop. We just need to use this to build the resource with just the account IDs. So this should be actually fairly simple to go. Add account ID, and we'll select our account ID as a resource, and we select add, and then we will go and put in the ID. So that should fill it in, then display it here, and that's that should work pretty well. So let's go to this and hit. Let's see what the debug turns back. So we'll go ahead and hit debug. We don't have any variables, so we should just hit run, and it should go all the way through. And we can go and take a look. Let's see, we found loop account, get records. We found some records, we looped. We found one item, and we put it in the list, and then we got the count. So that does work, and I just need a better example. So of account records so we grab more than one. Let's see. Oh. All the pop-ups. Okay. We'll just change this to add the word user. And now if we run again, now we should get two. Yeah, here's our two accounts. We get to our loop, and we loop it. Add them, and then we're getting the contacts, and we found records. Cool. All right, so that works. So the circumstance that we need to have here is whatever you're putting in your resource for the in, it needs to be essentially a text. I suppose it could be a number, like you can say where the sales price is in, and then a collection of sales prices. But the trick is you can't use full records. I used IDs because I think that's the simplest thing to do, is a bunch of IDs in order to grab the particular contacts. But we could have done where go grab everything where it has these domains for emails or something like that. That should all work. Let's see, what are things. I would say the get here is with the in is probably the biggest thing that I think is going to really make a big difference for a lot of people. I can't tell you the number of flows that we ended up not being able to build that because doing a loop within a loop to try to get it. Those records or having to create formula fields just in order to do a single get, it made most things so convoluted it wasn't even worth doing. A couple of smaller things but I think that are big. One is we can use isClone now. So this is one of those functions that was not available in the previous release that I know was holding me back from being able to migrate a couple of process builders. The other thing that I think is really cool here is if I go and put a bogus item in this function, you'll notice there's a check syntax button, and it's now using the kind of formula builder that we have when we are doing a field formula, and it's checking the syntax. So this is kind of a this reads more like a programming area than anything, but it says incorrect number of parameters, which really means here that it didn't expect anything within that parentheses. But we have access to all the funky functions that we have, which is a really nice addition. Doing this is so much nicer than just trying to remember everything. I used to actually go through and build a formula field. So I have the functions that I want, build it all out, and then just replace the stuff that needs to go within the functions using the insert resource here once I'm done. So I did everything copy and paste. But I really like this. This is going to make a lot of things vastly easier when you're building formulas. And this is the formula builder is not just in the start element. It's where if you're building an actual formula resource, it's there as well. So that is really nice. Let's see, what else do I have on my list that I thought was pretty darn cool? Yeah, formula builder and resource collection filters. Seeing all the goes. Let's go back here. I'm just gonna add some nonsense here. We're gonna do decision. Oop, I want a number there. And we're just gonna make some stuff up. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna cancel out of this, and we're gonna add a screen. In here, grab this. Just so I have something to select. Path 1. This is path 1. Add another choice for path 2, because it's always nice to have 2. And put a decision element. That's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Decision element. So this is going to be and this is where our screen equals. Oh, why is that was visible? Oh, I selected the screen. I want the path option component. There we go. Equals our first choice. Put path 2 in place. Equals 2. So we have our decision elements. Okay. And now let's say for whatever reason I want to actually connect this back to the start of the flow. So on the canvas, I can see, hey, one flow connection, and I can see down here path selection. What if I add a fault line here? We can see the fault going down through the left. So these are essentially they're connections. Because we're using the auto layout, we don't have a way to draw lines any which way like we used to. But this lets me connect to basically any other element in the system. And that was really tough on larger flows to kind of keep track of. So one of the neat things that they added was on the left-hand side here in the toolbox, there's now a place for all the connections. And now I just have to find where it is. believe it was just connections. Oh, connection starts with an. Oh, I don't see it. Okay, that is interesting. I wonder why that is not in the list, because that is certainly in the release notes. Let's see, what does the release notes say? Yeah, so this shows 3 connections. So, go through. I wonder what happens if we. So that goes up to here, plus 1 connection. Okay, let's do it on this side too, and connect it to the same one. I would expect that to show up in the toolbox based on the release notes, and I don't see it. Let's see. Let's try saving. Maybe it just needs to be updated. Nope, I don't see it. I can see my components. There's my elements, but I don't see the connections. That's disappointing, unless it's off the map. No, no connections. Okay. Wonder if that's just not in the released that I have. I don't know why that would not be in the release that I have. The way this is supposed to work is it's supposed to show up in the toolbar on the left hand side. Let's see, open a new tab. Oh, I see. I have to go to the screen. All right, so that's different. So let's take a look at the screen where I have everything. No, path 1, path 2. Okay, so it shows the connections that I'm going to down here, but that is still a little different. So details, usage, I don't see the incoming go to. So that is different from the release notes. But this is why we do these things, to make sure that we know what is coming and maybe how things are not working the way we kind of expect to. But it's still listed there, and that's nice. Let's see here. What else do we talk to? I got on the list. I'll just pull my wonderful list over. So, cut and paste flow elements. This is really nice. I like this. I'll show that in a second, because we could always copy and paste. But if you wanted to actually move chunks of things around, the only way I could figure out to do that without copying and then deleting was to leave the auto layout, which worked, but it was clunky. Being able to launch screens from Lightning Web components, that's nice, but I don't have a Lightning Web component, not about to create one. The multi-flow light, that this just basically means is the new section component is the way that you want to go for multiple columns. There's no reason not to use it. I love the section component. It makes screen flows look so much nicer. Yeah, we did the tables, we did that. All right. So let's talk about cutting things. If I want to move this up at the top, we now have the cut option. So if I hit cut, when you have something that's bifurcating your paths, you can actually choose if what you want to leave. So, let's actually add a couple of things on here, just so we have something to leave behind. Done. Okay, so now let's go cut the element, and we're only going to take path 1. So that's option. The option is we can cut a specific path, we can cut all, or we cut this is what do you want to leave. So this means that I'm going to leave path 2, but I'm cutting path 1 in selection. So if I wanted to leave 2 different ways, I couldn't do that, which would make sense because you need a decision or something to bifurcate. But we'll hit the cut, kind of grays out. And now if I come up here, there's the paste. There's my end screen that got left behind. Okay. I think that works pretty nicely, which would mean now if I wanted to count and this loop only to happen in path 2, I would cut, paste, cut, paste. And of course we aren't going to get contacts. Oh, that is so much nicer. That is so easier, much easier than simply copy and pasting and deleting everything. I like it. Everything else that I see in the release notes, for flow at least, I don't really think of as being too big of a deal. The automation home, it's getting a little bit more fleshed out. I have not used this before. I don't really have a reason to come to this for looking at as a consultant for other customers. But we are able to create flows and approval processes from this screen. And we should be able to, it says access flows. I'm not sure if the access just means to create or if the access is referring to I should be able to like open an existing flow. The action menus now linked to flows instead of process builder. Oh, action menus. Or what counts as an action menu? I have no idea what counts as an action menu. I wonder if it's this. Being able to select flows instead of something else. I'll have to see if I can find an org that is still in the summer release and see what it says. That's honestly, that's really it off of this list. Like I said, the real big thing that I'm excited for is being able to use this in and not in operator with gets. It should cut down on the number of challenging flow solutions that you have to build. Like I said, prior to this, you would either have to build formula fields to put the criteria that you want to use on the object that you're getting, which is not always feasible, or you had to rely on the fact that you're only going to have a small subset of items that you are comparing in the in, and then put that get in the loop, which, like I said, is not a good option simply because of the fact that you could run into limits pretty easily if you aren't able to restrict the number of times that you're looping through that parent to get, in this case, each individual account. And you don't have a way to kind of combine all those contacts together without having to create a resource that you fill in as you are grabbing each set of contacts within your loop. It would have been just messy. So I hope people find this interesting. I would love to know what your use cases are for using the in and not in functionality. I think it's going to be potentially huge. It's almost like being able to do maps like we can in Apex. Not quite the same, but it's close. And the other item that I think is really nice is that data table. Just being able to easily visualize multiple records at once is going to be pretty cool. I believe there was an unofficial SF component that let you do that, but it's nice to see it built in-house. So, with that, I hope people find this helpful. If you want to see more kind of flow stuff, I would love to hear what type of stuff you want to see. I like doing these live streams, but one of the challenges are what do people want to watch? I'm happy to do more things about migrating your process builders because that is a kind of a complicated situation. If you're interested in that, let me know in the comments. If you have any other thing you would like to have me live stream, let me know that